The message arrived while Melissa Webster was watering her African violets, a routine so predictable, so small, that when her phone shattered the silence with 3 sharp pings, she knew something had shifted. She wiped her hands slowly, already bracing for what the screen would say. And there it was, glowing with cold certainty. "It's $900 each, Mom. If you can't afford it, stay behind." She didn't reply. She didn't need to. Because this time, silence wasn't surrender. It was strategy. If you're watching this video, give it a like, subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Now let's get to the story. The message came from Hannah. No greeting. No phone call asking if she'd be interested in joining them for a family trip. Just a glossy photo of a Santorini villa, infinity pool stretching toward an impossible blue horizon, white stone balconies draped in bougainvillea, champagne glasses sweating condensation under the Aegean sun, and an instruction delivered like a memo from a supervisor to an underperforming employee. Melissa set the watering can on the windowsill and read the message again. Below Hannah's text, the family group chat came alive. Connor, Hannah's husband, posted a thumbs-up emoji. Hannah's brother chimed in with, "Looks sick." Someone else, a cousin Melissa barely spoke to, added a gif of a plane taking off. No one asked if she could afford it. No one asked if she wanted to go. They just assumed. The way they always did. Melissa's thumb hovered over the reply box. She could picture exactly what she was expected to type. "Sounds wonderful, honey. Count me in." Followed by a heart emoji, maybe. Something warm and accommodating. Something that wouldn't make waves. Instead, she locked her phone and set it face down on the kitchen counter. Outside, the late afternoon sun slanted through the lace curtains, casting delicate patterns across the hardwood floor. Her house was quiet, the kind of quiet she'd grown to appreciate after 30 years of school bells and crowded hallways and parents demanding explanations at dismissal time. Retirement had given her this, peace. Order. Control over her own space. She looked down at the violets, deep purple blooms finally thriving after months of struggling. She'd been patient with them. Adjusted the light. Monitored the soil. Waited. And now they were blooming. Melissa smiled. Not the warm, open smile she used to give her students when they finally understood a difficult concept. This was different. Smaller. Sharper. The kind of smile her staff used to whisper about in the teacher's lounge when she decided she'd seen enough nonsense for one school day. She turned off the kitchen light and murmured to the empty room, "Not this time." That evening, Melissa sat at her kitchen table with her laptop, doing what she'd done every Sunday for 30 years, reconciling her accounts. It was a habit left over from her days as principal: budgets, purchase orders, documentation. She liked things orderly. Numbers didn't lie, and records didn't forget. She logged into her bank account, expecting the usual: her pension deposit, the automatic payment for utilities, maybe a charge from the grocery store. Her hands froze over the keyboard. $5,826.40, international travel voucher, Santorini getaways. The charge was pending. Posted just this morning. Her name was listed as the payer. Melissa's pulse remained oddly steady as she clicked through to the transaction details. There was no mistake. The confirmation email sat in her inbox, forwarded from Connor's account with a breezy note. "Thanks for covering the deposit, Melissa. We'll sort out reimbursements after year-end bonuses hit. Can't wait for this trip." She read it twice. Thanks for covering the deposit. Except Melissa had never volunteered. She certainly hadn't authorized a charge for nearly $6,000. And she definitely hadn't given permission to use the card she kept for medical emergencies, the one she'd stored in Hannah's account years ago during a snowstorm when her daughter needed groceries and couldn't leave the house with a newborn. "Just in case, Mom. For emergencies." Melissa sat back in her chair, the laptop screen glowing in the darkening kitchen. She didn't panic. Didn't call Hannah in a fury. Didn't text Connor demanding an explanation. Instead, She opened a new browser tab, navigated to her bank security center, and locked the card. Then she changed her password, added two-step verification, and downloaded her account statements. 2 years' worth. Under the yellow glow of her desk lamp, Melissa began printing. Page after page, transaction after transaction, the pattern emerged like a photograph developing in a darkroom. Clemens Yoga Retreat, $412. Coastal Spa Getaway, $279. H Luxury Florist, $178. Summit Conference Hotel, $340. Each charge linked back to H. Webster Interiors, Hannah's interior design business. Melissa highlighted each one with a yellow marker, her movements methodical, precise. She noted the dates, cross-referenced them with family events, with Hannah's Instagram posts showing her at wellness retreats and design expos. Her daughter had been funding her curated lifestyle with her mother's retirement savings. Transaction by transaction. Month by month. Soft theft disguised as family borrowing. And Melissa had been too trusting to notice. She stacked the statements in chronological order, stapled them with the heavy-duty stapler she'd brought home from her principal's office, and slipped them into a manila folder. Across the tab, she wrote in blue ink, "Inheritance of lies." Then she placed it in her desk drawer, closed it with a quiet click, and sat in the darkness for a long time. Her phone buzzed on the table. Another message in the family group chat. Hannah had posted a poll, sunset yacht tour or private wine tasting? Vote below. The responses poured in. Enthusiastic emojis. Exclamation points. Someone suggested doing both. Melissa picked up her phone and scrolled through the thread. 37 messages since this afternoon. Plans solidifying. Excitement building. Her name mentioned twice, both times in passing, both times with assumptions attached. Mom will love the spa day. Melissa can share a room with Aunt Carol, right? Not a single question mark. Just statements. Decisions made on her behalf. She set the phone down and looked at the folder in her drawer. For years, she'd told herself that keeping the peace meant keeping quiet. That being a good mother meant being flexible, accommodating, endlessly patient. That saying yes, even when it hurt, was what family did. But sitting here now, in her quiet kitchen, with evidence of betrayal stacked in neat, highlighted pages, Melissa realized something. Silence had cost her more than money. It had cost her respect. Boundaries. The right to say no without apology. She stood, walked to the sink, and poured herself a glass of water. Outside, the streetlights flickered on. The neighborhood settled into evening routines, dinners cooking, televisions glowing through windows, the distant sound of a dog barking. Melissa looked at her reflection in the darkened window. A woman in her mid-60s, silver hair pulled back in a simple bun, reading glasses hanging from a chain around her neck. A woman who'd spent 3 decades teaching children about accountability, about consequences, about the importance of telling the truth even when it was hard. She'd taught her daughter everything she knew about organization. About documentation. About keeping records. Hannah had just forgotten who taught her. Melissa smiled again, that same small, knowing smile, and turned off the kitchen light. Tomorrow, she'd make a phone call. Not to Hannah. Not to Connor. To someone who understood leverage. But tonight, she would sleep soundly. Because for the first time in years, Melissa Webster wasn't afraid of what came next. She was ready for it. Monday morning arrived with the kind of gray light that made everything look washed out and tired. Melissa stood at her kitchen window, coffee in hand, watching the neighborhood wake up. Across the street, Mr. Chen loaded his briefcase into his sedan. 2 houses down, the Morrison kids waited for the school bus, backpack sagging off their shoulders. Normal. Predictable. Safe. Her phone sat on the counter where she'd left it last night, screen dark and silent. She hadn't checked the family group chat since yesterday evening. Hadn't responded to Hannah's poll about yacht tours versus wine tastings. hadn't acknowledged the flood of excited messages planning a trip she'd never agreed to fund. Instead, she'd spent the night thinking. Melissa set down her coffee and opened her laptop. The browser automatically loaded her banking homepage, muscle memory from decades of Sunday evening reconciliations. She entered her password, newly changed, and waited for the page to load. The pending transaction still sat at the top of her account activity, red and unmissable. $5,826.40, international travel voucher, Santorini getaways, status, pending date, October 27, 2025. She clicked through to the details again, even though she'd memorized them last night. Merchant name. Transaction ID. The confirmation number that matched the email forwarded from Connor's account. Her fingers moved across the keyboard with practiced efficiency. She opened a new spreadsheet, something she'd done thousands of times as principal, tracking budgets and expenditures and parent fundraising accounts. Column headers appeared: date, merchant, amount, category, notes. Then she went back. Not just weeks, but months. September, August, July. She scrolled slowly, methodically, her eyes scanning each line item the way she used to review supply orders and reimbursement requests. Most charges were familiar: the electric company, her car insurance, the local market where she bought groceries every Thursday. But then, tucked between routine expenses, she found them. August 12, 2025, Clemens Yoga Retreat, $412. Melissa paused. She'd never been to a yoga retreat. Never even considered it. She highlighted the charge, copied it into her spreadsheet, and kept scrolling. July 3, 2025, Coastal Spa Getaway, $279. June 18, 2025, Summit Conference Hotel, $340. May 22, 2025, H Luxury Florist, $178. Her pulse stayed steady, but something cold settled in her chest. Each charge had been small enough not to trigger immediate alarm. Small enough to slip past her monthly reviews when she was tired, when she trusted that her account was secure, when she assumed family meant safety. She opened a new browser tab and searched for Clemens Yoga Retreat. The website loaded: a luxury wellness center in Sedona featuring hot stone massages, guided meditation, and farm-to-table dining. She clicked through to the gallery. The third photo stopped her. Hannah, smiling in yoga clothes, sunset-lit and serene, posted on Instagram 4 months ago. The location tag read, Clemens Retreat and Spa, Sedona, Arizona. The caption, sometimes you need to invest in yourself. Grateful for this reset. Hashtag self-care, hashtag wellness journey. Melissa clicked back to her spreadsheet and added a note: Hannah, Sedona Retreat, August 2025. She searched the next charge. Coastal Spa Getaway. Another luxury destination. Another Instagram post from Hannah, this time with 2 girlfriends, champagne glasses raised, ocean view glittering behind them. One by one, Melissa traced each charge back to her daughter's life. The conference hotel matched a design expo Hannah had attended. The florist charge coincided with a photo shoot for Webster interiors that Hannah had posted about extensively. Every expense funded by Melissa's retirement account. Every withdrawal unauthorized. Every assumption that mom won't mind or mom can afford it or will pay her back eventually. Melissa sat back in her chair, the spreadsheet now filled with highlighted rows. 12 charges over 8 months. Totaling $4,387 before the Santorini deposit. She felt something shift inside her, not anger, not yet. Something colder. More analytical. The same feeling she used to get when a teacher's supply budget didn't add up, when a parent's excuse for their child's behavior contradicted the security footage, when the numbers told a story no one wanted to admit. She was good at numbers. Good at patterns. Good at finding the truth buried in documentation. And this truth was undeniable. Her daughter had been stealing from her. Quietly. Systematically. 4 months. A memory surfaced, unbidden. Last Thanksgiving. The whole family gathered at Hannah's house, newly renovated, of course, with custom cabinetry and designer light fixtures. Melissa had arrived with homemade pies, her contribution to the meal. Hannah had been showing off the new kitchen to her in-laws when Connor mentioned the cost. Worth every penny, he'd said, gesturing to the marble countertops. Though we're still recovering from the contractor bills. Hannah had laughed, light and easy. Mom helped us out with the deposit. She insists on spoiling us. Melissa remembered freezing mid-bite, fork halfway to her mouth. She hadn't offered anything for the renovation. Hadn't even known they were doing it until the photos started appearing on Instagram. But everyone was looking at her, smiling, nodding, expecting her to confirm Hannah's version of events. So she had. Happy to help, she'd said quietly. Hannah had kissed her cheek. You're the best, Mom. The memory left a bitter taste now. Melissa picked up her phone and dialed the number on the back of her debit card. The automated system walked her through menu options until finally, mercifully, a human voice answered. First Bank Customer Service, this is Steven. How can I help you today? I need to report unauthorized charges and freeze my debit card, Melissa said, her voice calm and professional. The tone she used to use when calling parents about disciplinary issues, friendly but firm, allowing no room for argument. I can certainly help with that. Can I have your account number, please? She provided the information, answered the security questions, and waited while Steven pulled up her account. I see you have several recent charges you'd like to dispute? Yes. Starting with the pending transaction for $5,826.40 to Santorini Getaways. I did not authorize that charge. Understood. I'm placing a hold on that transaction now. Can you tell me when you first noticed the unauthorized activity? Yesterday evening. But I've identified additional charges over the past 8 months that I didn't authorize. I'd like to dispute those as well. Steven's typing paused. 8 months of unauthorized charges? Yes. 12 transactions totaling approximately $4,387, plus the pending Santorini charge. And you're just noticing these now? There it was. The judgment. The implication that she'd been careless, inattentive, somehow complicit in her own victimization. Melissa's jaw tightened. The charges were made by someone with access to my stored payment information. Someone I trusted. I'm noticing them now because the pattern has escalated. I see. Steven's tone shifted, became more deferential. I'm so sorry you're dealing with this, Mrs. Webster. I'm going to freeze your current card immediately and issue you a new one. You should receive it within 7 to 10 business days. In the meantime, I'll email you the dispute forms for each transaction. You'll need to fill those out and return them within 30 days. I understand. Thank you. Is there anything else I can help you with today? Melissa looked at her spreadsheet, at the highlighted charges glowing on her screen. Just one thing. If these charges were made using stored payment information, is there a way to see which device or account accessed them? That information would be available through our fraud investigation team. Once you submit the dispute forms, they'll conduct a full review and contact you with their findings. How long does that typically take? 4 to 6 weeks, depending on the complexity of the case. 6 weeks. Plenty of time. Thank you, Steven. You've been very helpful. She hung up and immediately opened her email. The dispute forms arrived 3 minutes later, PDFs with fields for transaction details, dates, explanations. Melissa printed all 12 forms and set them in a stack beside her laptop. Then she opened her desk drawer and pulled out a fresh manila folder. Across the tab, she wrote in the same blue ink she'd used for 30 years of student files and incident reports. Inheritance of lies. She slipped the bank statements inside, added the printed dispute forms, and placed the spreadsheet summary on top. The afternoon light had shifted by the time Melissa finished documenting everything. Her coffee had gone cold. Her neck ached from hunching over the laptop. But the folder was complete. She sat back, stapler in hand, and looked at the evidence spread across her kitchen table. Highlighted charges. Printed receipts. Cross-referenced Instagram posts. A pattern of theft so clear, so undeniable, that no amount of explanation or excuse could soften it. Her daughter had stolen from her. Repeatedly. Deliberately. And then smiled to her face at Thanksgiving dinner, kissed her cheek, called her the best. Melissa stapled the documents together with slow, deliberate pressure. The click-click of metal through paper punctuated the quiet kitchen. She'd stapled thousands of documents in her career, permission slips, grade reports, disciplinary records. The sound was familiar. Comforting, almost. When she was finished, she closed the folder and held it in both hands. The woman who'd arrived at this table 3 hours ago, the woman who'd still harbored doubt, who'd wondered if maybe she'd misunderstood, if maybe there was an innocent explanation, was gone. In her place sat someone harder. Someone who understood exactly what had been done to her. And someone who knew precisely what came next. Melissa placed the folder in her desk drawer, locked it with the small brass key she kept on her keychain, and stood. Outside, the gray day had given way to evening. Streetlights flickered on. The neighborhood settled into its routines. But inside Melissa Webster's quiet kitchen, something had shifted. Doubt had become confirmation. Silence had become readiness. And the woman everyone underestimated had just begun to fight back. The invitation came on Wednesday, 3 days after Melissa had locked her folder in the desk drawer. Her phone rang while she was repotting a jade plant, Hannah's name appearing on the screen with calculated cheerfulness. Mom. Hi. Hannah's voice was bright, almost aggressively warm. What are you doing Sunday evening? Connor and I would love to have you over for dinner. Just the 3 of us. It's been too long. Melissa set down her trowel and considered the invitation. Quality time. That's what Hannah called it when she wanted something. That sounds lovely, Melissa said. What time? 6:30. I'm making that lemon chicken you love. I'll be there. Perfect. Oh, and Mom? Dress nice. I'm trying out some new table settings for a client presentation. Everything in Hannah's life was a performance, even family dinners. Sunday arrived with unseasonable warmth. Melissa dressed carefully, navy blouse, tailored slacks, pearl earrings. She arrived at Hannah's house at exactly 6:30, parking behind Connor's Tesla. The house was a testament to Hannah's aesthetic ambitions, modern farmhouse style, sage green with black trim, perfectly manicured landscaping that had undoubtedly cost thousands. Melissa wondered how much of it she'd unknowingly funded. Hannah opened the door before Melissa could knock, pulling her into a hug that smelled of expensive perfume and masked anxiety. Mom. You look wonderful. Come in. The table was set with linen napkins folded elaborately, wine glasses catching light from pendant fixtures, candles flickering in geometric holders. Fresh white peonies, out of season and expensive, spilled from a crystal vase. Everything perfect. Everything curated. Everything designed to impress. Connor emerged carrying wine, his smile as polished as the hardwood floors. Melissa. We're so glad you could make it. He was already pouring before she answered. This is a Sancerre we discovered in Napa. You'll love it. Melissa accepted the glass she hadn't asked for and took a small, polite sip. Probably $50 a bottle. She wondered if this, too, had been purchased with her card. Sit, Hannah gestured. Melissa noticed the seating arrangement immediately, not at the head of the table, but positioned like a guest. Connor took the head. Hannah opposite him. Melissa to the side, observer rather than equal participant. The power dynamics weren't lost on her. Dinner was elaborate. Lemon chicken perfectly plated, roasted vegetables arranged with magazine precision, wild rice pilaf garnished with pomegranate seeds. Hannah served with commentary on each dish, where she'd sourced ingredients, techniques used, how the presentation was inspired by a Portland restaurant. "This is beautiful, Hannah," Melissa said, and meant it. Her daughter had always been talented. It was the entitlement underneath that had become the problem. "I'm so glad you think so." Hannah beamed. "I've been working on creating elevated everyday dining experiences. It's important to invest in quality, you know? Make ordinary moments special. Life's too short to settle for mediocre," Connor agreed, refilling his wine. Melissa cut into her chicken, saying nothing. "You know, Mom," Hannah continued, her tone shifting to concern that felt like condescension, "I've been thinking about you lately. About your lifestyle." Melissa looked up. "Oh. You just seem so restricted. I worry you're not enjoying retirement the way you should. You deserve to live a little." "I'm quite content." "But are you really?" Hannah leaned forward, earnest. "When was the last time you went somewhere? Did something spontaneous? This Santorini trip is once in a lifetime, and I hate the thought of you missing out because of, well, old-fashioned ideas about money." There it was. Judgment wrapped in false concern. The implication that Melissa's careful budgeting was a character flaw rather than responsible planning. "Old-fashioned ideas," Melissa repeated softly. "You know what I mean. The whole penny-pinching mentality, denying yourself experiences. Connor and I have learned you have to spend money to make memories. You can't take it with you, right?" "That's true," Melissa agreed. "You can't take it with you. Which is why it's important to know where it goes while you're still here." Hannah blinked, thrown. Connor jumped in, voice smooth. "What Hannah means is we'd love you to join us. As a family. And the deposit situation, that was just us being efficient. We knew you'd want to come, didn't want to lose the villa. They book up months in advance." "I see," Melissa said. "So you were doing me a favor." "Exactly." Hannah brightened. "I knew you'd understand. And we will pay you back. Once Connor's year-end bonus comes through, we'll settle everything. We always do." Melissa set down her fork with deliberate care. She smiled, that small, knowing smile that used to make her vice principals nervous. "Just remember, dear," she said quietly, "promises have interest." The statement hung in the air. Hannah's smile faltered. Connor's hand paused halfway to his wine glass. "What do you mean?" Hannah asked, voice pitched higher. "Exactly what I said. Promises accumulate over time. Eventually, they come due." Melissa sipped her water. "Simple mathematics, really." Hannah laughed, too quickly, too loudly. "You're being cryptic, Mom. We're just talking about a vacation." "Are we?" Melissa met her daughter's eyes with unsettling calm. "I thought we were talking about assumptions. Taking things without asking. The difference between generosity and expectation." The temperature seemed to drop. Connor shifted, suddenly fascinated by his plate. Hannah's carefully constructed composure showed cracks. "I don't understand why you're being like this," Hannah said, voice tightening. "We're trying to include you. Create family memories. And you're turning it into some kind of financial audit." "Perhaps because that's what it is," Melissa said simply. Hannah's face flushed. "That's not fair. We've always been transparent. Always grateful for your support." "Have you?" "Because gratitude usually involves asking permission. Transparency involves honest communication. What you've been practicing is something else entirely." "I think there's been a misunderstanding," Connor interjected, mediator voice activated. "We genuinely thought you'd approve the deposit. The card was on file from the grocery emergency. We just assumed." "Yes," Melissa interrupted gently. "You assumed. That seems to be a pattern." Hannah stood abruptly, chair scraping. "I need to check on dessert." She fled to the kitchen. Connor cleared his throat, attempting recovery. "Melissa, I think Hannah's just stressed about the business. Things have been tight, and this trip is important for her mental health. She's been working so hard. I'm sure she has, Melissa said. Building a business takes dedication. And capital. The question is whose capital she's been using. Connor's smile disappeared. What are you implying? I'm not implying anything. I'm stating a fact. 12 unauthorized charges over 8 months. Each traced to Hannah's business or personal wellness. Would you like to see the documentation? Color drained from Connor's face. You've been investigating? I've been paying attention. There's a difference. Hannah returned carrying a berry tart that looked absurd now, gleaming fruit, golden crust, fresh cream dollops. Dessert, she announced, voice brittle with forced cheer. Mom, you're going to love this. It looks lovely, Melissa said. But I should get going. It's getting late. Late? It's only 7:30. Hannah set down plates with force. You just got here. I have an early morning. Volunteer commitment at the library. She stood, collecting her purse with the same calm efficiency she'd used to dismiss contentious parent meetings. Hannah and Connor stood too, trapped in social obligation. At the door, Melissa turned. Candlelight flickered behind them, casting hollow shadows on their faces. Thank you for a lovely dinner, she said. The chicken was perfect. You've always had such an eye for making things look the way they should. Hannah's expression wavered between relief and suspicion. We should do this more often. Perhaps. Though next time, I'd prefer to host. I like to control the menu. And the expenses. She leaned in, kissed Hannah's cheek, and smiled. Good night, dear. Sleep well. Melissa walked to her car without looking back. As she pulled away, she glanced in the rearview mirror. They stood in the doorway, silhouetted against warm light, trying to decode what had just happened. Let them wonder. She drove home through quiet streets, hands steady on the wheel. Inside her chest, something had crystallized. Open confrontation wouldn't work. Hannah was too practiced at deflection, too skilled at reframing reality. Evidence, not emotion. Documentation, not accusations. That was how you dismantled someone who'd built their life on assumptions. Melissa unlocked her desk drawer, pulled out the folder labeled Inheritance of Lies, and added a new note, Dinner November 3, 25. Acknowledged unauthorized charges. No apology offered. Pattern confirmed. She locked the drawer, made tea, and sat by the window while violets bloomed in fading light. Tomorrow, she would make another call. Not to Hannah. Not to the bank. To someone who understood that justice required patience. And Melissa Webster had learned patience from 30 years of dealing with people who thought rules didn't apply to them. The community center on Maple Street didn't look like a place where people came to reclaim their lives. It was a squat brick building with faded paint and a parking lot that needed repaving, tucked between a laundromat and a tax preparation service that only opened during filing season. But the sign in the window was clear: financial assistance and credit advocacy, free consultations, Tuesdays and Thursdays, 2 to 5 p.m. Melissa pulled into the lot on Thursday afternoon, the folder labeled Inheritance of Lies, resting on the passenger seat beside her purse. She'd rehearsed what she would say, how she would present the information without emotion, without the tremor of betrayal that still caught in her throat at unexpected moments. Inside, the waiting area smelled like old coffee and lemon floor cleaner. A young woman sat behind a desk, typing on a computer that had probably been donated sometime during the previous decade. I'm here to see someone about financial assistance, Melissa said. I didn't make an appointment. I wasn't sure if. Mr. Lucero can see you, the woman interrupted, not unkindly. He just finished with someone. Down the hall, second door on the left. The office was small but organized, metal filing cabinets against one wall, a desk covered in neat stacks of paperwork, diplomas and certifications framed on the wall. Behind the desk sat a man in his 70s with silver-rimmed glasses and the patient expression of someone who'd spent decades listening to people explain how their lives had been upended by numbers. Mrs. Webster. He stood, extending his hand. I'm Rafael Lucero. Please, sit. His handshake was firm, his voice gentle. Melissa recognized the tone, the same one she'd used with parents who came to her office ashamed that their child was struggling, afraid they'd be judged. Thank you for seeing me without an appointment, Melissa said, settling into the chair across from him. That's what we're here for. He folded his hands on the desk. What brings you in today? Melissa opened her folder and slid it across the desk. I need someone to tell me if what I think is happening is actually happening. Or if I'm overreacting. Mr. Lucero put on his glasses and began reading. His expression didn't change as he scanned the first page, the spreadsheet with highlighted charges. Then the second, bank statements with yellow markers drawing attention to familiar patterns. Then the third, printed emails, Instagram posts, cross-referenced dates. The silence stretched. Melissa watched his face, looking for judgment or dismissal. She found neither. Finally, he set down the last page and removed his glasses. How long has this been going on? He asked. 8 months that I can document with certainty. Possibly longer. The person accessing my account is my daughter. Mr. Lucero nodded slowly, as if this explains something. Family cases are always the hardest. People assume that because they're related, the rules are different. That boundaries don't apply the same way. I gave her access to my card information years ago, Melissa said. For emergencies. A snowstorm, she had a newborn, couldn't get to the store. I thought she'd delete the information afterward. Did you give her permission to use it for these charges? He gestured to the spreadsheet. No. Did she ask before making any of these transactions? No. Did she inform you after the fact? Only once. For the Santorini deposit. And even then, she framed it as if I'd already agreed. Melissa's hands tightened in her lap. The others I discovered on my own. Mr. Lucero leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled. Mrs. Webster, what you're describing isn't a misunderstanding. This is sustained identity misuse. Your daughter accessed your stored payment information repeatedly, without authorization, for personal and business expenses. He paused. And if she claimed any of these charges as business expenditures on her taxes, the spa retreats, the conference hotels, that's potential tax fraud. The words hung in the air. Melissa had suspected, but hearing it stated in legal terms made it real in a way her quiet discoveries hadn't. So I'm not overreacting, she said softly. You're not overreacting. You're being victimized. The fact that it's your daughter doing it doesn't make it less serious. It makes it more complicated, but not less serious. Melissa felt something loosen in her chest, not relief exactly, but vindication. The validation that her anger was justified, that her silence hadn't been wisdom but survival. What are my options? She asked. Mr. Lucero pulled a legal pad toward him and began writing. You can file a police report for identity theft and unauthorized use. You can pursue civil litigation to recover the funds. You can report the potential tax fraud to the IRS if you have evidence she claimed these as legitimate business expenses. He looked up. Or you can confront her privately and demand repayment with the threat of legal action if she refuses. Which would you recommend? He studied her for a long moment. That depends on what you want the outcome to be. Do you want your money back? Do you want accountability? Do you want to maintain the relationship? Melissa thought about Sunday's dinner. Hannah's dismissive tone, Connor's empty promises, the way they'd framed her reasonable boundaries as old-fashioned thinking. I want her to understand that actions have consequences, Melissa said. I want her to know she can't keep taking without asking. I want, she paused, choosing her words carefully. I want justice. Not revenge. Justice. Mr. Lucero smiled slightly. Then you need leverage. Documentation, yes, but also a strategy. You need to think several moves ahead. I was a school principal for 30 years, Melissa said. I'm very good at thinking ahead. They spent the next hour going through her documentation, Mr. Lucero making notes, asking questions, explaining legal terminology. He showed her how to request formal transaction records from her bank, how to document the pattern in language that would hold up under scrutiny, how to protect herself going forward. Change all your passwords, he said. Enable two-factor authentication on everything. Get a new debit card with a new number. Don't give the information to anyone, even in emergencies. I've already done that. Good. He tapped the folder. Keep this documentation secure. Make copies, digital and physical. Store them in different locations. If you decide to move forward with any legal action, you'll need pristine records. I understand. As Melissa gathered her papers, Mr. Lucero added quietly, I've been doing this work for 15 years. I've seen adult children drain their parents' accounts, forge signatures, take out credit cards in their names. It's more common than people want to believe. He met her eyes. What's less common is parents who fight back. Most just absorb it. They convince themselves it's not that bad, or that family is more important than money. Family is important, Melissa said. But so is respect. And you can't have one without the other. Outside, the afternoon had turned gray and cold. Melissa sat in her car for a moment before starting the engine, Mr. Lucero's words echoing in her mind. Sustained identity misuse. Tax fraud. Potential criminal charges. Her daughter. The baby she'd raised, the child she'd sent to college, the woman she'd supported through business struggles and personal setbacks. A memory surfaced, sharp and unwelcome. 5 years ago. Hannah sitting at Melissa's kitchen table, business plan spread out between coffee mugs, eyes bright with ambition. I just need a small loan, Mom. Just to get started. $5,000 to cover the LLC filing, initial inventory, website development. I'll pay you back as soon as I land my first client. Melissa had written the check that afternoon. $5,000 from her savings. The repayment never came. Instead, 6 months later, business is slow right now, Mom. But it's going to take off, I can feel it. Could you maybe help with the photography budget? Just $2,000. I'll pay back everything once I get established. Another check. Another promise. Then the office deposit. The design software subscription. The trade show booth rental. Small loans that were never repaid. Promises that dissolved like sugar in water. And Melissa, not wanting to seem unsupportive, not wanting to be the mother who didn't believe in her daughter's dreams, had kept writing checks and telling herself it was an investment in Hannah's future. The memory left a bitter taste. She'd been so proud of Hannah's ambition. So determined not to be the obstacle between her daughter and success. She'd never considered that she was funding not a business, but an image. Melissa pulled out her phone. Hannah's Instagram appeared on the screen, because of course she'd looked, of course she'd been monitoring the evidence of her own exploitation. The latest post was from this morning. A flat lay photo, passport, sunglasses, a straw hat, and a printed itinerary for Santorini. The caption read, Countdown to Paradise. So grateful for family that values making memories together. Hashtag Santorini dreaming, hashtag family first, hashtag grateful heart, hashtag mom goals. Hashtag mom goals. Melissa's jaw tightened. There she was, reduced to a hashtag. A prop in Hannah's curated narrative of the perfect life. The comments were full of heart emojis and enthusiastic responses. So jealous. You deserve this. Family goals for real. Not one person knew that family that values making memories meant a mother whose retirement savings had been quietly drained to fund her daughter's performance of success. Melissa locked her phone and started the car. That evening, she sat at her kitchen table with her laptop and Mr. Lucero's notes. She scanned every document in the Inheritance of Lies folder, creating encrypted digital copies that she stored in 3 separate cloud accounts. She printed duplicate sets and placed them in envelopes, one for her safe deposit box at the bank, one for her attorney, one locked in her desk drawer. Then she opened a blank document and began typing. Not an accusation. Not a demand. An administrative memo, the kind she'd written hundreds of times as principal when documenting incidents that might require formal action. Subject, Notice of Unauthorized Financial Activity. Date, November 7, 2025. To Family and Professional Network. From, Melissa Webster. Documentation and disclosure. She wrote in calm, precise language. Listed the transactions by date and amount. Noted the lack of authorization. Attached supporting documentation. Ended with a single line, formal report pending. No emotion. No accusations. Just facts, presented with the clinical precision of someone who understood that truth needed no embellishment. When she finished, she saved the document but didn't send it. Not yet. Timing mattered. Leverage required patience. She sat back, looking at the screen, and felt something settle into place. Not anger anymore, but clarity. Purpose. Hannah thought she'd learned everything from expensive business coaches and design influencers and networking conferences. But she'd forgotten the most important lessons. The ones Melissa had tried to teach her before ambition and entitlement had drowned out everything else. Actions have consequences. Documentation matters. Truth always emerges. Melissa closed the laptop and whispered to the quiet kitchen, I taught you everything you know about records. You forgot who taught you. Outside, the streetlights flickered on. The neighborhood settled into evening routines. But inside Melissa Webster's modest home, justice was no longer an abstract concept. It was a strategy. Methodical. Inevitable. Already in motion. And when it finally arrived, it would be wearing her daughter's own words as evidence. Melissa woke at dawn on Tuesday morning, made her coffee, and watered her African violets while the sky lightened from black to gray. The routine was deliberate, steady hands, calm breathing, the familiar motions that had anchored her through 3 decades of difficult decisions. Today would require all the composure she'd cultivated over those years. She sat at her kitchen table with her laptop and opened the draft she'd written 4 days ago. The email sat exactly as she'd left it, clinical, precise, devastating in its simplicity. Subject, Notice of Unauthorized Financial Activity. The distribution list was already prepared. Family members. Hannah's business sponsors, the boutique hotel chain she'd partnered with, the luxury furniture company that featured her designs, the lifestyle brand that had made her a micro-influencer. Professional contacts whose endorsements appeared on Webster Interior's website. 43 recipients total. Melissa attached the documentation packet, highlighted bank statements, cross-referenced Instagram posts, transaction timelines, the spreadsheet showing 8 months of systematic theft totaling $10,213.40 including the Santorini deposit. She read the email one final time. For awareness and record purposes. The attached documents detail financial transactions originating under my name without authorization. This notice serves as formal disclosure pending further action. Melissa Webster. No accusations. No emotional appeals. Just documentation, presented with administrative neutrality. Her cursor hovered over the send button. She thought about Hannah's face at Sunday's dinner, the patronizing concern, the casual dismissal of boundaries. She thought about Connor's empty promises. She thought about years of being treated as an ATM disguised as a mother. Melissa pressed send. The email whooshed into the void. No turning back now. She closed the laptop, finished her coffee, and went to tend her garden. By 10 a.m., her phone started buzzing. She ignored the first 3 calls, all from Hannah. Then the texts began flooding in. Hannah, Mom, call me now. Hannah, what did you do? Hannah, people are asking me questions, I can't explain this. Hannah, call me. Melissa silenced her phone and placed it face down on the counter. Across town, though Melissa couldn't see it, Hannah's carefully constructed world was imploding in real time. The boutique hotel chain's marketing director had emailed within 30 minutes, We need to discuss some concerning information that's come to our attention. Please call at your earliest convenience. By 11, the luxury furniture partnership had suspended their collaboration pending internal review. By noon, Hannah's Instagram comments section had transformed from supportive to suspicious. Is this true? Are you scamming your own mother? This is disgusting if real. Hannah deleted the Santorini countdown post. Then the family vacation announcement. Then disabled comments entirely. But the internet never forgot. Screenshots circulated. The story spread through the small business community like fire through dry grass. Successful designer accused of funding lifestyle with mother's retirement savings. The narrative Hannah had spent years crafting: grateful daughter, family-oriented entrepreneur, #mom goals ambassador, disintegrated in hours. The rain started just after 2 p.m., heavy drops that turned the afternoon dark and made the streetlights flicker on early. Melissa was reading by the window when she heard the car door slam. She didn't need to look to know it was Hannah. The pounding on the door came seconds later, not a knock, but fists hammering wood with desperate fury. Melissa set down her book, smoothed her cardigan, and walked to the door. She opened it slowly. Hannah stood on the porch, soaked through, mascara running in black streaks down her face, phone clutched in one trembling hand. Her expression was pure rage barely containing panic. "What the hell did you do?" she screamed. Melissa stepped aside. "Come in. You're getting wet." "I don't want to come in. I want you to fix this." Hannah's voice cracked. "Do you have any idea what you've done? My business is ruined. People think I'm a criminal. My sponsors are dropping me." "Then perhaps you shouldn't have committed crimes," Melissa said quietly. Hannah surged forward into the house, pacing like a caged animal, dripping rainwater onto the hardwood floors. "Crimes? I borrowed money from my own mother. That's what families do. They help each other. Families ask permission. You took without asking. Repeatedly. 4 months." Melissa closed the door and walked calmly to her chair, sitting down with her teacup still in hand. "That's theft, Hannah. Not borrowing. I was going to pay you back." "When? After the next unauthorized withdrawal? After the next business expense you charged to my emergency card?" Melissa set her cup on the saucer with a soft clink. "You've been saying you'll pay me back for 5 years. I stopped believing you sometime around year 3. Hannah stopped pacing, her breath coming in ragged gasps. "You could have come to me first. We could have worked this out privately. But you went nuclear. You humiliated me in front of everyone I know." Melissa met her daughter's eyes with unsettling calm. "I did come to you," she said softly. "When I raised you." The words landed like a slap. Hannah's face twisted, color draining then flooding back. "That's not fair. I came to you when I taught you about honesty. About asking before taking. About respecting other people's boundaries." Melissa's voice remained steady, almost gentle. "I came to you every time I chose patience over confrontation, hoping you'd learn accountability. But you didn't learn. You just learned I wouldn't fight back. So this is punishment?" Hannah's voice rose, shrill. "You're punishing me for not being the perfect daughter? I'm holding you accountable for stealing nearly $10,000 from my retirement savings." Melissa stood, moving to the kitchen counter where the folder labeled "Inheritance of Lies" sat waiting. She opened it, showing Hannah the highlighted statements. 12 unauthorized charges. 8 months of systematic theft. Each one documented, dated, cross-referenced with your own social media posts. Hannah stared at the evidence, her face cycling through emotions: anger, fear, something that might have been shame if it weren't so quickly buried under defensiveness. "You investigated me," she whispered. "Your own daughter." "I protected myself," Melissa corrected. "From someone who saw my trust as an opportunity." "I can't believe you're being this cold. This cruel." Hannah's hands balled into fists. Do you even care what this is doing to me? To my marriage? Connor's furious. His parents think I'm a thief. I might lose everything. You already took everything, Melissa said. From me. This is simply me taking it back. Hannah's eyes widened, filling with tears that might have been genuine or might have been manipulation. Melissa couldn't tell anymore, didn't care to distinguish. I'm your daughter, Hannah said, voice breaking. Doesn't that mean anything? It meant I gave you opportunities one couldn't afford. It meant I stayed silent when I should have spoken. It meant I chose your comfort over my dignity. Melissa closed the folder. Being my daughter doesn't entitle you to my bank account. It doesn't excuse theft. And it certainly doesn't obligate me to protect you from the consequences of your own choices. You're really going to do this? Hannah's tears spilled over. You're going to destroy your own child? I'm not destroying you, Hannah. I'm documenting what you did and letting the truth speak for itself. Melissa returned to her chair, picking up her teacup as if they were discussing the weather. If that destroys you, perhaps you built your life on a foundation that couldn't bear the weight of honesty. Hannah stood there, dripping and shaking, rage and desperation warring on her face. You're cold, she finally said. I always knew it. Underneath all that patience and understanding, you're just cold. Melissa took a sip of tea, her hand perfectly steady. I'm correct, she said. The silence that followed was absolute. Rain hammered the roof. Thunder rumbled in the distance. Hannah and Melissa stared at each other across the space that had once held a relationship and now held only wreckage. I'll pay you back, Hannah said finally, desperately. Every cent. I'll set up a payment plan. I'll make this right. Just please, Mom, fix what you did. Send another email. Tell people it was a misunderstanding. No. Please. You had years to make this right. You chose not to. Now you'll live with what that choice created. Hannah's face hardened. Fine. Then you've lost a daughter. I hope your precious bank account keeps you warm at night. She turned and stormed toward the door, yanking it open. Rain blew in, soaking the entryway. Hannah, Melissa called. Her daughter paused, hand on the doorframe, not turning around. You didn't lose a mother today, Melissa said quietly. You lost a victim. There's a difference. Hannah slammed the door so hard the windows rattled. Melissa sat in the resulting silence, listening to the car engine start, tires squealing on wet pavement, the sound fading into the storm. Then she picked up her phone and dialed. Her estate attorney answered on the second ring. Melissa. I got your email this morning. Quite the situation. I need to amend my trust, Melissa said. Today, if possible. What changes are you making? Remove Hannah Webster and Connor Walsh as co-beneficiaries. Transfer their portion to my granddaughter Lily's educational trust, locked until she's 25. Full discretion to the trustee regarding distribution. A pause. That's a significant change. It's a necessary one. I can have the paperwork ready by end of day tomorrow. You'll need to come in to sign. I'll be there at 9 a.m. After she hung up, Melissa pulled out a piece of stationery, cream-colored, heavy stock, the kind she'd used for formal school correspondence. In blue ink, the same pen she'd used to write, Inheritance of Lies, on the folder, she wrote. Savings now secured against entitlement. She folded it carefully and placed it in an envelope addressed to Hannah. No explanation needed. No emotional appeal. Just a statement of fact. She sealed the envelope, placed a stamp in the corner, and set it by her purse to mail tomorrow. Outside, the storm raged. Inside, Melissa sat in her quiet kitchen, the violence of the confrontation already fading into memory. She felt no triumph. No satisfaction. Just a deep, settling calm, the feeling of a weight finally lifted, a wound finally cleaned even though the cleaning had hurt. Her phone buzzed. Messages flooding in from family members, questions and accusations and demands for explanation. She turned it off entirely. Tomorrow she would deal with the aftermath. Tomorrow she would sign the new trust documents and mail the letter and begin rebuilding boundaries that should never have been crossed. But tonight, she would sit with her tea and her violets and the knowledge that she'd done something terrifying and necessary. She'd chosen herself. After 63 years of choosing everyone else first, she'd finally chosen herself. And if that made her cold, so be it. At least she was correct. 1 month later, winter arrived early. Melissa stood at her kitchen window watching frost patterns form on the glass, her hands wrapped around a mug of chamomile tea. The neighborhood was quiet in that particular way December mornings were, muffled, expectant, holding its breath before the day began. Her routines had settled into something peaceful. Morning tea. Watering the violets. Updating passwords on the first of every month. Small rituals that marked time and reinforced boundaries. The African violets were thriving now, deep purple blooms clustered so thick she'd had to move them to a larger pot. She'd been patient with them, and they'd rewarded that patience with abundance. The kitchen counters were clear. The bills were paid. Her bank account had two-factor authentication on everything, a new card number she'd memorized but not written down, and transaction alerts set to notify her of any purchase over $20. No surprises. No intrusions. Just order. Her phone sat on the counter, silent. She'd blocked Hannah's number after the third week of increasingly desperate voicemails, apologies that felt more like manipulation, promises that sounded hollow, accusations that she was tearing the family apart. Melissa had deleted them all without listening past the first sentence. Family hadn't been torn apart. It had been revealed for what it was, and she'd simply stopped pretending otherwise. The call came mid-morning while she was organizing her tax documents for the upcoming filing season. Mrs. Webster. This is Agent Shen with the IRS Criminal Investigation Division. Do you have a few minutes to speak? Melissa set down her pen, unsurprised. She'd been expecting this call since she'd submitted the anonymous whistleblower report 3 weeks ago. Of course, she said. How can I help you? We're conducting an investigation into Webster Interiors regarding potential tax fraud, specifically, personal expenses claimed as business deductions. Your name appeared in our preliminary review as someone who might have relevant information. I do, Melissa said calmly. I have extensive documentation. Would you be willing to provide that documentation? Absolutely. I can email it this afternoon, or I can bring printed copies to your office if you prefer. A pause. You sound very prepared, Mrs. Webster. I was a school principal for 30 years, Agent Shen. I'm always prepared. She could hear the smile in his voice. Printed copies would be ideal. Can you come in Thursday at 2 p.m.? I'll be there. After she hung up, Melissa pulled out the duplicate file she'd kept specifically for this purpose. Every receipt organized by date. Every transaction highlighted and cross-referenced. Every Instagram post printed and annotated with the corresponding charge. She'd taught Hannah about documentation. About keeping records. About the importance of paper trails. It seemed fitting that those lessons would be what held her accountable. Thursday afternoon, Melissa sat across from Agent Shen in a windowless office that smelled like burnt coffee and recycled air. He flipped through her documentation with the focused attention of someone who recognized meticulous work when he saw it. This is, remarkably thorough, he said finally. I like things organized. Mrs. Webster, can I ask, why file an anonymous report? You could have simply provided this information when we contacted you. Melissa folded her hands in her lap. Because this isn't about revenge. It's about accuracy. If your investigation determined there was no wrongdoing, would have accepted that. But if there was wrongdoing, it needed to be addressed regardless of my personal feelings. Agent Shen studied her for a moment. Your daughter claimed several luxury retreats, spa treatments, and personal travel as business expenses. According to her tax returns, these were categorized as professional development, client entertainment, and research costs. And according to my bank statements, They were charged to my account without authorization and used for her personal benefit. Yes. He tapped the folder. That's very clear from your documentation. You'll find the documents organized by date, I assume? Chronologically, with subcategories for transaction type. Tab 1 is unauthorized retail purchases. Tab 2 is travel and accommodations. Tab 3 is wellness and personal services. Agent Chen's eyebrows rose slightly. You really were a principal. For 30 years, Melissa said. You learn to organize evidence when you spend 3 decades documenting student incidents and parent complaints. Well, Mrs. Webster, your evidence is going to make our job considerably easier. We'll likely need to contact you again as the investigation progresses. I'm available whenever you need me. As she stood to leave, Agent Chen added, for what it's worth, I'm sorry you're in this position. Family cases are always difficult. They're only difficult if you prioritize comfort over truth, Melissa said. I've chosen truth. That evening, Melissa made herself dinner, roasted chicken, steamed vegetables, nothing elaborate but satisfying in its simplicity. She ate at her kitchen table with a book propped open beside her plate, the house quiet except for the furnace humming and the occasional creak of settling wood. No group chats buzzing with demands. No unexpected charges appearing on her statement. No calls asking for money disguised as invitations to participate. Just peace. After dinner, she pulled out her journal, a leather-bound book she'd kept sporadically over the years, filled with observations and reflections from different seasons of life. She turned to a fresh page and wrote. December 8, 2025. Peace isn't bought by silence, it's earned by proof. I spent years believing that keeping quiet was the same as keeping peace. That absorbing injury was the price of family harmony. That my worth was measured by my willingness to give without asking for reciprocity. I was wrong. Peace requires boundaries. Harmony requires honesty. Worth isn't determined by what others take from you, but by what you refuse to surrender. I have reclaimed my savings, my autonomy, and my self-respect. The cost was a relationship built on exploitation disguised as love. It was worth it. She closed the journal and looked around her kitchen, modest, paid for, entirely hers. The violets bloomed on the windowsill. The counters were clean. Everything in its place. This was enough. More than enough. This was home. Saturday afternoon brought an unexpected visitor. Melissa was in her garden, preparing the beds for winter mulch, when she heard the small voice call out, Grandma. She turned to find Lily running across the lawn, pigtails bouncing, arms outstretched. Behind her, Melissa's son-in-law Marcus followed at a more measured pace, hands in his pockets. Melissa caught Lily in a hug, breathing in the scent of her strawberry shampoo and childhood innocence. What are you doing here, sweetheart? Dad said we could visit if you weren't busy. Are you busy? Never too busy for you. Melissa straightened, meeting Marcus's eyes. He nodded, a small gesture of solidarity that said more than words. Marcus had called after the email went out. Unlike Hannah, he'd asked questions instead of making accusations. He'd listened when Melissa explained. And he'd quietly ensured that Lily's relationship with her grandmother remained intact despite the fallout. Can I help you garden? Lily asked, already reaching for the small trowel. Of course. We're putting the beds to sleep for winter. They worked together in comfortable quiet, Lily chattering about school and her upcoming dance recital while Melissa guided her hands, teaching her how to tuck mulch around the sleeping perennials. After a while, Lily sat back on her heels and asked, Grandma, are you coming on our trip next summer? We're going to the beach. Dad said I could ask you. Melissa paused, trowel in hand. Where are you going? Cape Cod. There's a lighthouse and tide pools and everything. Can you come? Melissa looked at her granddaughter's hopeful face, unmarred by entitlement, innocent of the manipulation that had poisoned her mother's requests. Maybe, Melissa said gently. If I do, I'll pay my part. With my card. Lily tilted her head, not understanding the significance but accepting it anyway. Okay. I hope you come. It's more fun when you're there. We'll see, sweetheart. Marcus called from the porch. Lily, 5 more minutes, then we need to go. Melissa and Lily finished tucking in the last plant bed, then walked hand in hand back to the house. At the door, Lily hugged her tight. I love you, Grandma. I love you too, sweet girl. After they left, Melissa stood in her doorway watching their car disappear down the street. Above the door frame, taped at eye level, was the note she'd written weeks ago. My kindness is not currency. She'd put it there as a reminder. A boundary made visible. A promise to herself that she wouldn't forget the lessons learned through painful experience. Melissa touched the note lightly, then closed the door. Evening settled soft and early, the way winter evenings did. Melissa made her tea, settled into her chair by the window, and watched the streetlights flicker on one by one. Her phone buzzed, a text from Marcus. Thank you for seeing Lily. She misses you. For what it's worth, I think you did the right thing. Melissa typed back, thank you for bringing her. She's always welcome. She set the phone aside and looked around her quiet home. The violets bloomed. The counters gleamed. Her bank statement showed only her own careful purchases. Everything she'd fought for was here, autonomy, dignity, peace earned through proof rather than purchased with silence. The smile that crossed her face was the same one that had started this journey, small, knowing, unshakable. But now it carried something different. Not restraint. Strength. Not patience waiting to be exploited. Patience that had finally learned its worth. Melissa Webster had spent 63 years being the woman everyone expected, accommodating, generous, endlessly forgiving. Now she was simply herself. And for the first time in longer than she could remember, that was exactly who she wanted to be. She raised her teacup to the empty room, to the violets blooming purple and proud, to the life she'd reclaimed one documented transaction at a time. To proof, she whispered. And smiled.